आप सब लोग समय से जुड़ जाते हैं और मैडम तो पहले से ही जुड़ जाती हैं। हमको मैडम का कभी भी इंतजार नहीं करना पड़ा। मुझे याद है कि कभी भी किसी भी सेशन में हमको मैडम का इंतजार नहीं करना पड़ा। तो इस तरह से बहुत ही पंक्चुअल, सिंसियर, मेहनत करने वाली मैडम का सबकी ओर से हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करते हैं।
आप लोगों का स्नेह
हैं। और आज का जो हमारा विषय है वो होयसल राजाओं के जो समय, जो मंदिर, टेम्पल कर्नाटक से संबंधित है ना मैडम जी। तो वहाँ की दक्षिण में जो बहुत ही विकसित परंपरा है। और सबसे अच्छी बात क्या है कि चारों प्रदेशों में, आंध्रा, केरल, तमिल और कर्नाटक में हमारी भारतीय संस्कृति का प्रभाव, संस्कृत का बहुत ही ज्यादा प्रभाव है और जीवंत रूप से अभी भी वहां पर देखा जाता है। तो वहां पर हमारे जितने भी आचार्य हुए हैं वो लगभग बहुत से आचार्य भी वहां के हुए हैं। तो वहाँ संस्कृत और संस्कृति दोनों की परंपरा अभी भी जीवित हम देख सकते हैं। तो ऐसे हम लोग वहाँ के आज मंदिरों के बारे में मैडम से सुनेंगे। मैडम का और सभी श्रोताओं का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ अपने भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट की तरफ से। और साथ में अपने श्री JB शाह जी का भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूँ कि उन्होंने हमारे संस्था के वाइस प्रेसिडेंट के रूप में इतनी अच्छी योजना और परिकल्पना हम लोगों को दी है कि आज पूरे देश के लोग घर में बैठ करके पूरे देश के मंदिरों के दर्शन कर रहे हैं। और उनकी परिकल्पना को सार्थक बनाने में जो हमारे संस्था के अध्यक्ष हैं श्री निर्मल भोगीलाल जी मुंबई, इसी तरह से संस्था के प्रेसिडेंट हैं श्री राजकुमार जी ओसवाल, और श्री धनेश जी का परिवार जो पहले हमारे यहाँ के कोषाध्यक्ष हुआ करते थे, उनके बेटे सुगत आदि, तथा राजकुमारी मातुश्री सुमेर चंद जी के परिवार, जिनके परिवार से TK जैन साहब आज भी हमारी संस्था में बहुत बड़ा योगदान दे रहे हैं। ऐसे 4 परिवारों के प्रति भी हम बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन उनका करते हैं और उनके प्रति कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हुए आज का जो मंच है वो मैडम को सपोर्ट करते हैं कि वो अपने मूल वक्तव्य को।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू, थैंक यू। वेलकम everybody to the new session today. And yes, okay. Everybody can see my screen. Yeah. So Hoysala temples. Period of Hoysala's first quarter of 11th century to almost end of middle 14th century. Right. So quite a long period for that matter, but not as long as the Chol period that we saw last time. So basically they were the feudatories, or they had the allegiance, right, of the Eastern Chalukyas of Kalyan. We studied the Western Chalukyas, Badami, Patadakal, Aihole. All these places were ruled by the Western Chalukyas. And then the Eastern Chalukyas, they ruled from Kalyan, right? So they were actually the feudatories, or they were, their overlords were these Eastern Chalukyas, right? Basically tribals who actually, with the help of Western Chalukyas, they conquered the Karnataka region and then eventually even overthrew the Western Chalukyas, right? This is basically the historical facts that we should know about the Hoysalas. So Hoysala architecture is broadly classified and studied based on dynastic and stylistic patterns, right? As you can see in the picture also, this is a picture of Keshwa Temple at Somnathpur. Stellate plan. Stellate plan means star-like plan. Always, most of the time you will find this kind of a plan where there are quite a few of the temples will have more than one Garbhagriha. So there are different number of, there are two or three, 4, 5 likewise. Then another typical feature is the very, very finely, intricately carved pillars. You almost feel they are lathe turned. So there is always this debate about the Hoysala temples, about the pillars, because when you will look at them, you will realize how finely they are shaped. Then the Madanika sculptures, you may have come across earlier. When you will look at them, maybe you will recall. And then the Jalandharas. These are of course, the windows, right? Here you have these, no, in the Mahamandap or the Navranga Hall. Yeah. So these are some of the typical features that we encounter in Hoysala temples. Okay. So this is the emblem of the Hoysala kingdom. All right. So there is a Kannada folklore which tells about a very young man. His name was Sala. All right. Who saved his Jain guru, right? His Jain guru's name was Sudatta. And by, striking dead a tiger when he encountered near the temple of the goddess Vasantika at Angadi. Of course, now it's called Sosavur. Okay. So the word strike literally means, it translates to poi in, Old Kannada, which becomes Hoy later, and hence the name Hoysala, somebody who had killed this particular tiger. So this legend actually first appeared in the Belur inscriptions of the Vishnuvardhan around the 1117, right? But owing to, there are many, inconsistencies in this particular Sala story, so that we cannot say this for sure, and it still remains as a folklore only, right? So the legend may have come into existence because, or must have gained popularity after King Vishnuvardhan. His victory over the Cholas at the Talakad, as the Hoysala emblem actually depicts the fight between the mythical warrior Sala and a tiger, the tiger being the emblem of the Cholas, or the lion for that matter. So the stone which is used is very, very soft chloritic schist of blue or a gray color stone, very soft, so almost soapstone. Therefore, the carvings are very, very intricate, as you can see here in the background. Very intricate. It is believed that when the stone is, it is very soft when it is quarried, right? When it is taken out from the mines. And hence the intricate carving is very much possible. It is much later that the stone, tends to become very hard when it is exposed to the atmospheric air. So later on, then it will become little brittle. But when it is quarried, at that time, it is pretty much soft, right? So this is basically the region. Multiple Gargrahas in one temple. Ekkuta is Channakeshwara temple at Belur. Then Dvikota is Hoysaleshwara temple at Helibid. Trikuta is, of course, the Keshwa temple at Somnathpur. Chatushkuta is the Lakshmi Devi temple at Dodagadabali. And then Panchkuta is Panchikeshwara temple at Somnathpur again. And then there is again, 5 lingas are there with 5 Garbha. There is another temple. In fact, also another feature that is prevalent, many, many works or sculptures, we will find they have been signed on these temples, okay, which was not such a, we did not encounter this feature much in earlier temples as much. So we are looking at the plan of Channakeshwara temple at Belur. So the temple was actually built to commemorate King Vishnuvardhan's victory over the Cholas at Talgad that I just mentioned. So overall, cruciform, plan, almost like a, cross, stellate, layout. You can see this star-like, yeah. So the platform or the Jagati also takes on the form of the indentations or the projections of the temple as such. Also known as Vijayanarayan Temple, all right, or the Victorious Narayan. Double meaning, you can say here. The king is almost equated to Narayan or Vishnu, the presiding deity of the temple who's there. So Mahamandap here, you can see hypostyle means it's a pillared mandapam here. And earlier, actually, there were these open balconies on the sides, which later actually, during the period of Ballala king, they were kind of closed with the jali windows, right? Or latticed windows, as we call them. Okay. Okay. Then, of course, you will find horizontal friezes on the outer wall, having decorations of animals, floral motifs, musicians, dancers, battle scenes, and depiction of well-known events from religious literature, etc., etc. So this star-shaped plan actually provides more surface area for sculptures and bas-reliefs. That I think I have mentioned earlier also. So when one wall is broken into many, like these different services, you find a lot of place for the sculptors to carve out niches and then place different sculptures there. Okay. So these pierced, jalis we saw at the Ladkan temple also, at Pattadakal. Okay. And of course, the pillars are wide, circular, almost lathe turned. So when I say almost, because still there is a lot of debate, because there are few historians who say that it is not humanly possible unless these pillars were turned on the lathe to get such perfect, rotundity and the polish and etc., etc. Explicit of the, considerable skill, in the making, if they were not using the lathe, right? Okay. So as I said, built around 1117, although the tower of the Gopura here is much later, 16th century of the Vijayanagar period. This view actually is taken from inside the temple. We are already standing inside. This is the outside. We've entered the temple here, looking east through the gateway to the village, which is beyond there. So the platform here that you can see on this Dvajastambha, or on which this lamp tower stands, in fact, it also exhibits the general Hoysala preference for the star-shaped foundation that we get, in the main temple also. Okay, so the main deity inside, of course, is Channakeshwara. Channakeshwara is another name for Vishnu. Channa means very, very beautiful. Some of us, if they understand Marathi, sometimes in Marathi we say, no, Chandista, means looking very beautiful. So Channakeshwara is somebody who's very, very beautiful. Okay. So it has 3 entrances, as I told you. This is the first one, and 2 on the side. Protrusions were there, and they were entrances earlier. And their doorways have, decorated sculptures and dwarpalkas, or the doorkeepers, as we call them, on either side. So that central hall, here you can see these jalakas very, very clearly here. And here, right in the front, you see Vishnu Vardhan, some life scenes, the court scene from Vishnu Vardhan's life. All right. And these are the perforated screens. The superstructure is totally lost, but I have an old picture where you can clearly see this. And yeah, so this is how probably this is taken in the very early 20th century, around 1910 or something, or 30. This picture was taken. So this is the southwest view of Channakeshwara temple. Almost appears to be a Bhumij kind. Bhumij kind, when I told you, when the superstructure is divided into 4, distinct quadrants. And this is the defining feature, it is, all the 4 directions are demarcated by this, plain kind of a strip that you get on the superstructure, and made up of these multiple shikhars here, horizontally laid in a line, and also vertically, they are all going in one line. Okay. So with 5 stories normally, where the superstructure is distinctly marked by these different quadrants that I have shown you. Okay. So multiple rows of these miniature shikhars all the way to the top, and just below the inverted lotus that you have on top, right? Okay. So there are three entrances, east, south, and north. We are looking at the east entrance. The miniature shrines here probably, they also endorse the idea that probably the main, Shikhar of this temple probably looked like this, which is clearly a Bhumij kind of Shikhar or Ravesara, temple, as they are all called. Okay. But of course, now it is totally absent. So, and very, very ornate lintel you get above one of these temple entrances, profusely, floriated, shows Vishnu here in the form of Narsingha above, seated on Garuda here. You can clearly see Garuda here. And of course, do you see these pillars here? Almost lathe turned, as we call them. And there's a lot of vegetation, which is, and below this, arch that Narsingha is seated. And there are these makar or a Gaj makar, I would say them, because just the face is that of a makar and the rest of the body is almost, that of a lion, of an elephant. So here you can see very clearly, very, very beautifully carved Vishnu Vardhana's court scene, east entrance. Here you can very nicely see. So you have Vishnu here on top, Garuda here on this side. And almost, it is equating the king to the divinity. Then, of course, the outside brackets, the Madhanika sculptures at the Channakeshwara temple. The 42 bracket sculptures that decorate the outside of walls of the Channakeshwara temple under the eaves are very, very fine examples of Hoysala art. It is very rare to see, original brackets, in situ. In situ means at the site, at other temples. Most have been, lost or damaged or, stolen. So this is one temple where you find such beautiful Madhanika figures or the celestial maidens in various poses, playing musical instruments, dancing, beautifying themselves, etc., etc. Yeah. So here, this is the Vashikanya woman probably loosening, her garment to get rid of the Scorpio, which is there at the base here, you can see. Very, very realistic, shown below her feet. So the figure actually stands in a very much accentuated Tribhanga posture and is almost nude or naked, except for her ornaments, I would say, and the loosened cloth which is there around her, in her hands. So the fullness of her figure, in fact, suggests association with the Western Chalukyan Deccan traditions that we saw, the sculptures that we saw earlier. The early art of the Rashtrakutas also and the Vakatakas also. So you can see the stone is very, very deeply undercut, and these foliate motifs behind her almost appear, almost lace-like, as if it's a fabric where this lace work is done. Very, very effectively that you can see against the dark shadows, yeah. So this is one very big highlight of the Hoysala temples, yeah. Some more. The huntress, a very popular figure, again. Right now it is in the National Museum also. And this is the, of course, Darpan Sundari again. Okay. Then there is wealth of sculptures on the outer walls, which are surmounted by the superstructures or the shikhars, yeah, as decorative patterns, almost in line with the temple shikhar that we saw earlier, probably in one of the old photographs that I showed you. Here you see different divinities who are present here. Yeah. So Vishnu's footprints are preserved here in stone. So the tradition, in fact, is very old, from around 100 AD, in fact. Buddha's footprints were also used as an iconic, representation and, worshipped. So here you can see a Naga couple. The lower bodies of this couple, in fact, is almost strikingly, it is intertwined in a knot-like fashion. So we are going to sit back and relax and enjoy the intricacy of the carvings of Hoysala temples. That's what it is. I mean, the beauty is just beyond anybody's imagination. And because by now we have already understood the basic structure of the temples and, the different parts, etc., etc. Right. So here you have Vara expression is, almost not, I think, valorous rather than heroic. He's, very passive here, or tender, I would say that. So a very wide variety of expression is characteristic of the sculptures in Hoysala temples. Yeah, here you have Narsingha, Ugra Narsingha in the, almost in the process of killing the Hiranyakashipu. And you have Garuda here, almost, reclining back, almost, terrorized by this very form of Narsingha. Then Shiva dances in triumph on the decapitated head of the elephant. I have told you the story, the Gajantka Shiva. Neel was the name of the elephant. And he has stretched the elephant skin over his head like almost a canopy. Okay. And this is the Shivabhikshatana. Okay. In fact, if you look at the sitting man here, you will know the proportion also, the size also of these miniature shrines which are present as soon as you at the east entrance, right? It kind of provides you a sense of scale here. And horned lions here, you can see, Vyalas and elephants here. So almost a form of Gajantaka, Singha, what we saw in Odissan temples. So there is elephant here and here too, and almost, bouncing on that elephant is the lion on top here that you can see very well here, right? And this is the image inside this subsidiary shrine at the entrance already. So in fact, it's very, very tempting now. We are seeing this structure to speculate that probably the original temple superstructure might have been built like this. And you have here on the Shukanasi, you have another Vishnu sculpture here. So this is another form of Vishnu, Narayana, 16-armed, is seated on a lotus that is upheld by 4-armed, here, Garuda here you can see. So in fact, Vishnu's attributes include, there is a, club, spoon, skull staff, conch, sword, drum is there, then chakra, and many others to show the, in fact, the omnipotency. Narayana is a form of Vishnu as the supreme God. So when some of the Westerners, come back and, try to ridicule the Indian gods and goddesses, it is actually, we are talking about their, omnipotence, character or omniscience, or, it is not that we are trying to, project somebody who's actually having these many arms. It is these many powers that they have got, right? It is more in the philosophy rather than actually putting a, direct meaning to that sculpture. Okay. So here you can see very, very ornate pier screen. Yeah. These screens were later inserted in the 13th century, right? Between the previously open columns of the mandap. Okay, here you can see Vishnu and his consort, Lakshmi, as part of the decoration of this pier screen. Now we have entered into the temple. The carving, this is a very, very popular sculpture of Mohini, very, very deeply, undercut, so that the figures, and motifs almost stand out sharply against the background, right? So Mohini is inside the Koshta Stambha. Koshta Stambha means there is a pillar and there is a niche inside that, and this is where it is located. And she is, of course, the female aspect of Mohini and Vishnu, which the story I have already told you. In fact, Likewise, Narsimha is also found in one of the Koshta figures, right, like this. And this is another Madanika figure you have inside the temple now. Okay. So you in this temple, you find 24 forms of Vishnu, which are presented on the temple walls. So here, this is the Dwarpala figure, Hanam, who is also four-armed. So do not mistake him to be Vishnu figure. These are the Dwarpalas on the just outside the main Garbhagriha that is there inside. Vijay Narayan with 4 attributes accompanied by Sri Devi and Bhudevi, who is present inside the main Garbhagriha. So this second temple we will talk about is the Hoysaleshwara Temple, 12th century temple in Helibid. So the ancient name of Helibid is Dorasamudra, which was the old Hoysala capital also. Okay. So here you can clearly see the temple is laid out on a double plan, almost as if 2 temples were joined side to side. Both shrines open to the east, as you can see here. This is north, this is east, and rest of the usual Hoysala stars, bases, etc. And in fact, there are no gopuras or towers here. Built by Katamalla Dandanayak under Vishnuvardhan in 1121. All right. We will see in Hoysala period, lot of these generals, or the Dandanayak as they are called, they also enjoy a lot of power, and quite a few of these temples were built by them, right? Hoysaleshwara and Shitaleshwara, all right? These are the 2 temples they both have separate Nandi mandapams, all right? So in fact, there are many Jain temples also present near the site at Helibid. Yeah. So both the temples share the platform here in the stellate pattern. And these are the steps which lead you to the platform. There are these miniature shrines, which almost becomes a norm in these Hoysala temples on either side. And this is, of course, the Navranga. Again, you have that latticed jalis here. In fact, most of these temples will have a Shukanasi, which is, of course, absent here. Shukanasi is the superstructure, on the top of Antaral or vestibule. And yeah, so Navrang, Shukanasi, Antaral, all these, Garbhagriha, Nandi Mandapam, these are all integral parts of the Hoysaleshwara temple. So the temple, in fact, enshrines a Shivalinga inside, and many of the sculptures which are there are Shiva, although some Vishnu images are also present here. So Nandi, of course, is located right in the pavilion facing the temple, all right, on the same axis of the temple. Then these are some of the Shiv Pratiharas or Dwarpalas. Now you can appreciate the intricacy of the carving here. Look at the ornaments, as if almost every detail is depicted here. This is another one, the Lalat Bim, where Shiva is shown as Nataraj. Now this is the interior of the mandapam, and you can see variety of pillars here inside. This is Antaral or vestibule here. And these are the horizontal friezes that I was talking about, very typical of Hoysala temples, which kind of elevates the height and, imparts a little bit height to the temple, because normally they are not very tall temples like how we saw in Odisha temples or, Khajuraho temples. These temples are relatively much stunted as such, all right. So you have the Makaras, the Gajas, the Hansas, the Puranic stories are there, Mithunas are there, etc. Then above this, these 5-6 friezes, you have the multiple niches housing the various Parivar Devtas. And the third portion, normally you will have different kinds of superstructures, which of course, all this is because of the restoration, you don't find these. Otherwise, they are capped by different kinds of shikhars here, as you can see here, almost in a temple-like fashion, right? Yeah. And then, of course, you have this prastara on top here, from where the shikhar portion starts. So Makara decoration on the frieze here you can see. Then Brahma here with three faces. Of course, the rear face is always implied, which you cannot see in this two-dimensional picture. He rides a goose here. The scale of the goose is little bit, I would say, much, much larger than normally you will find. Then elephant-headed Ganesh you can see on the Mushaka at the base, right? Okay, so Brahma's actually four heads also indicate that he was associated with the four cardinal directions, his power almost radiating to the four quadrants of the universe. Also, he's supposed to be chanting the four Vedas at all times. That's also, implied. This relief of Varha is, here you can see some kind of fierceness in this face against the conquered demon here at the base you can see. So normally we find a, figure of a Naga here, when we have the Varha image, but here almost in a human form, the Asura is being depicted here, right? And this is another depiction of. So these were some of the very, very popular themes as far as these, these sculptures are concerned. So here Vishnu takes a very giant step to reclaim the universe. Garuda is worshipping here at the base. And Brahma with his three heads you can see here, which appears near the right foot. So which actually indicates that in this step, Vishnu has almost covered the heavens also. No? Okay. So here Garuda is seen, is a bird who is an arch enemy of the snake. So here it is seen fighting a pair of snakes. Then Harihara, you can see here Shiva as, sorry, Nataraj. Then fierce manifestation of, Shiva you can see here on this side again as Andhakasur, Andhakantaka Shiva, killing the demon. And you can have Andhakasur here also at the, where his trident is piercing through him, right? Okay. Another aspect of Shiva here, dances very, very gracefully on a very small platform. Okay. So we have another sculpture here. This image is kind of a, I would say, amalgamation or conjoint image of the gentle Bhikshatana image and the fierce Bhairav image, both forms of Shiva. The sandals belong to Bhikshatana, the other attributes to Bhairav, the fangs, etc. In the lower right, in fact, two figures, they seem to represent a Brahmin trying to keep his wife away from Bhikshatana, because I think that's the story I haven't told you. Maybe you can go back and check. Okay, overall, the fierce expression, in fact, and the imagery of Bhairava clearly is dominating this particular sculpture. Okay. So Durga, armed with all the weapons of all the gods that were given to her for slaying the Mahishasura. So here you have both the forms. There is a Mahisha here, and there is the human form also, which is emerging out. So anthropomorphic form of Mahishasura you have here. Okay. Here you have Kali, who's dancing, around the graveyard with the trident, swords, and, severed heads are there around. In fact, she's adored by, you can see the corpses here on the other two sides. So Kali actually represents time, who brings all things to ruin, and then, for it to get generated again. So this side you have the fierce goddess Chamunda, who's almost, dancing in triumph here. And Chamunda is almost shown with this totally, skeletal body, emaciated body, always. Yeah. So these are all the white, again, all outside the wall sculptures showing Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Parvati, etc. So here you can clearly see, so Krishna, lifting the Govardhan Parvat here. This is Gajantaka Shiva. Very clearly you can make out. Some more sculptures you can enjoy. And yeah, here you can see Ravan Anugrah Murthy, Ravan with his multiple heads, and Mount Kailash and Shiva Parvati atop, seated. And this is a very interesting episode from Mahabharata. We all know the Chakravyuh, which the Kauravas had kind of engineered, and Arjun's son Abhimanyu, he went inside, he knew the technique of entering the Chakravyuh, but I think the mother slept when Arjun was telling her this particular story, and that's how he didn't know how to get out of the Chakravyuh, and that's where he was then finally killed. Okay. Now we will talk about the Keshwa Temple at Somnathpur around 1270 CE. So before we talk about Somnathpur Temple, I also want to tell you about the Agrahars. So what are the Agrahars? Agrahars are basically places or townships or the villages which are governed by Brahmins, a Brahminical settlement that you can say, partly exempted from the state taxes, and that some places which are totally exempted from all taxes are also called Sarvanamasya Agrahars. Okay. So these learned Brahmins in Vedas, Purans, Agams, and skilled in temple rituals, astrology, etc. They found a place in these Agrahars. Okay. And they were given free house, sites, land, and several other facilities. In return, they performed duties that were assigned to them and received annual income, like all the religious duties they would perform. And they would teach also all the Vedas, Shastras, etc. So there were very different settlements, these different settlements were there. So there were Vishnu Agrahars and the Shaiva Agrahars also. So Brahmins, of course, taught Vedas, Shastras, Agmas, etc. with free housing, land, etc. And there were different levels of Brahmins also, some Vaishnavas and other Shaivites. They enjoyed almost independent identity, I would say, and conducted the business being almost self-sufficient. Okay. So in this sense, the temples were actually the nerve centers, and the economy was based on the various temple activities. Okay. And why am I telling you all this? Because Somnathpur had multiples of these Agrahars, and this particular Keshwa temple also was one such Agrahar temple. Okay. So this is the layout plan of the temple. Plinth, walls, Viman, and the Shikhar, they all follow this stellate pattern right up till the top. Okay. And the courtyard is enclosed by this cloistered veranda with 64 cells, 52, plus corner double cells, right? And 2 at the, and 8 on the Mahadwara, this side. Okay. So that's how they all become 64. So there are 29 projections here on this Garbhagriha wall. You can hear 29 projections, right? Altogether, 9 on each Garbhagriha you have, and 2 here at the joining, right? 2 like this at the joining. Okay. And there are 4 steps that from each side of the veranda and from the Mahadwar here, you can enter. Another typical feature of these Hoysala temples is also we do not have those very high gopuras, right, which we encounter in later periods. In fact, the overall height of the temple is also much, much reduced. So this is, of course, a Vesra temple, not in worship, built of the, same blue-black schists of stone. East facing, we can see that. No large gopuram, but big, gate entrance is there in the temple precinct, which is there. 3 kuta, we can see 3 Garbrahas are there, right? 3 sanctum with identical vimanas there, that we will see later, and connected with the common Navranga Hall here, that we have here, which has these pierced jalis, which we will see later. And in fact, altogether, there are 16 ceilings here inside. But, mostly they have all different decoration. And in fact, the superstructure is almost, you feel there is a centrifugal, outburst of it. This is how, the entire temple looks like. Okay. Right. I will talk about more features as we progress. So 24 aspects of Vishnu, in fact, are carved on this wall of the temple. Interestingly, there are no Madanikas, or the Shalbhanjika figures are totally missing on this temple, although there are some, erotic imagery you will find encountered on the plinth level. All right, Kamdev and Rati are also shown on the lower door jamb, etc., on the sanctum doorway. So the temple was again established by a general Dandanayak called Somnath, and hence the name Somnath, right? Under the Hoysala king Narsingha III, okay, around 1260 or 68, something like that, okay. Lots of inscription of artists are found, but it is said that only very senior artists were allowed to write their names. So there was a lot of migration of artists also from the later Chalukyan region, and that's how we see that influence also. So this, huge, mighty column might have been, originally a Garud column. All right. So not in worship, of course. So the gate, this is the Mahadwar, or the entrance of the temple, almost appears incomplete. Of course, it is reached by climbing some couple of steps there. Square hall with bell-shaped capitals that you can see here very clearly. So in fact, this Keshwa Temple is the last of the, gem of a building that from the Hoysala period that we have, but best preserved, I would say, of all the major Hoysala temples, because in fact, all the different elements of the temple are still intact, right? Yeah. So this is a 3-meter height stone inscription slab that we have, which bears, in fact, 4 records in 212 lines inscribed at different times. So not at one time, in Sanskrit and in and Kannada language. Both languages are used, but in Karnataka script, right? It actually informs us about how this Agrahar was established, and about the other 6 temples also that were built and maintained by this particular Agrahar. Okay. Now, this is a very important stele that we have been looking at. Why? Because although the image in the main Garbhagriha, in the western Garbhagriha, the one at the back, the image, the main deity is, lost inside that. But by looking at this stele, one can imagine the kind of sculpture which must have been present in the western Garbhagriha. So here you have the Venugopal, which we have on the southern side. You have Janardana on the, northern Garbhagriha. And this image is missing from the western one. So by looking at this figure, we can clearly make out that probably this figure was present earlier. And this, the ceiling of the Mahadwara, divided into 9 equal panels, fully blown, lotus encircled within a double square, a square, and large leaves. So these ceiling decorations are again very typical feature of Hoysala period, which we do not encounter otherwise in Dravidic temples at all. And we saw some of these ceiling decorations also in the Pattadakal, those temples, or Durga Holy Temple, we saw these ceiling decorations. Yeah. So this is the view of the Mahadwar from inside the temple precincts, courtyard looking outwards, right? And these are some of the sculptures which have been, collected from the site, and on this platform, they are all displayed if you go and visit this temple today. There are some of them, defaced and damaged also. Some Jain sculptures are there and Hindu sculptures are there in this corridor. Okay. So this is, of course, again, view from the Mahadwar looking towards the main temple we are looking. So here you can see the Navranga Hall has these latticed windows very clearly. Dwarf pillars, these small pillars are there. Because at the bottom, I showed you those, multiple friezes in the Hoysala Temple. And it was a norm in all the Hoysala temples that we have. Yeah. So walls have basically two divisions here. You can clearly see. Each corner of the plinth has elephants. Here, I will show that in detail. Profusely sculpted, this superstructure, which is now, we will see some detail also. So this, of course, is the walkway or the veranda, the inner side of the temple's boundary enclosure. So fronted by these lathe-turned pillars here. And these are the subsidiary shrines the cloistered veranda has, right? And in fact, they are all empty today, right? And some of the sculptures which might have been present here are present on that, side platform that I showed you earlier. So again, the corridor I wanted to show you with these very beautiful pillars here. So this almost, looks like the inspiration coming from the Buddhist viharas. The vihars will always have cells all around the structure, the living quarters of the monks. Okay. So here you can see Trikuta shrine. This is the superstructure or the Shikhar here. This is the third Garbhagriha. Because of the height of this and the angle from where the picture is taken, you can not see this particular third Shikhar here. These are the Shukanasis. I told you most of the temples will have this protrusion, the Shukanasi above the Antaral figure, Antaral structure, which actually leads you, which is a connection between the Garbhagriha and the Mandapa in the center. Okay. So these are, of course, the two miniature shrines which we saw in earlier temples, although they are empty here and the superstructure is also lost here totally, right? Okay. Yeah, this is the overall picture that I wanted to show you. So these are those, elephants at the base of the temple. So there are 29 such projections on the Jagati or the platform or the terrace, alternating with the elephant and the deity, all right, standing with the attendants. In fact, nearly all the divinity sculptures with attendants and elephants are destroyed. Just very few are remaining. Okay. And this is, of course, the superstructure at the entrance wall that we are looking. And another aspect of Vishnu you can see. So no other temple celebrates the Chaturve, avatars or the aspects of Vishnu as this Keshwa Temple at Somnath. So now here you can see very, very clearly all the three sections of the porch and the mandap wall. So these are the multiple friezes that we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have these, sculptures, what I showed you in the last temple also, and these capped by these shikhars, so almost imitating the temple-like structure here. And these are the jalakas on the mandap here, you can clearly see. So this middle portion is decorated with the divinities, you know? And then you have the Kirti Mukhas. Here you have the different stories, Puranic stories, which are present here. And we can look at some story of Prahlad and Holika here, you can clearly see. Then Vikrama, Narsimha on the porch and Mandapa walls, you can see. Then Kaliya Mardan, you can clearly see here the snake Kaliya in the river Yamuna and Krishna vanquishing that. Yeah. Some musicians, dancers. So, of course, this is the outer wall has all the miniature deities in relief and common life scenes that you will get. Couples and, some kind of sexual intercourse or kamas or mithunas, different, towers or shikhars you can see here on top also. So these are some of the erotic imagery that you find on the temple walls. So in fact, here these perforations or the jalakas, they don't bear any embellishments, as we saw in the Channakeshwara temple, and I showed you Vishnuvardhan's court scene there. All right. So in fact, the entire fabric of this, temple is covered with various sculptures. Hardly any square inches of space has escaped the carver's hand, I would say that, right? Okay. And we can see now in detail some of them. The swans, the yalis, the epic episodes, the scrolls, horses, elephants, these all friezes you will find here. The bottommost almost always has the elephants. So it is actually, implied that probably it is the elephants who are holding the weight of the entire temple. So that's why the bottom frieze you will find in many temples. I've shown you on cave temples also. Then, of course, Ellora was the biggest example of this, right? As if they are symbolically supporting the temple on their backs. So martial frieze, where you have, these very, very many horsemen wielding different kinds of swords, spears, they trample, over these fallen warriors underfoot. And this is, of course, a convoy of elephants carries some baskets and fruits. Almost, every person and animal in this frieze, including the fallen warriors, is given an individualized, attribute, I would say, or a posture. Then Krishna, playing his pranks here, stealing the butter. Krishna uprooting the twin trees. These are some of the episodes from the childhood of Krishna. Okay. Then this is a very sensitive and realistic depiction, I would say, where this, small duck is kind of trying to feed the chicks here. Then you have a lot of scenes from Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavad are also depicted on these horizontal panels, right? These are some of the scenes from Ramayana, we can see. Clearly, you can see Rama going after the golden deer here. Krishna killing Bakasur demon. This is the Bakasur here, you can see. Then Ravan with 10 heads trying to lift Kalashia. All these were very, very popular themes. Krishna lifting the Govardhan mountain. Playing the flute, with gopis and the gopas, his friends. So all the three Gargrahas have the pranala here, all right, on the different sides, north, south, or western side. Okay. Now we are looking at this portion now. I just now showed you this portion of the temple in detail. And now we are going to look at some of the sculptures which are present on this part of the wall. Okay. And here you can see multiple kinds of shikhars. Just as we saw almost a library of different kinds of temples in the Panch Pandava, at the Pallava, from the Pallava period. Similarly, we can see very many different kinds of shikhars here. Okay. Krishna playing the flute here, surrounded by attendants. It almost copies the image which is there inside the southern Garbhagriha. Okay. Then again, Krishna lifting the mountain, Vishnu. You have on the left, dancing Lakshmi you have here. And this side is Saraswati's. Yeah. Brahma, this side, Varha. We have Yog Nara and Vishnu. Many a times this figure is mistaken for an image of Buddha, the ninth incarnation of Vishnu. But here, looking at his attributes, etc., he is Yog Nara and Vishnu. And here we have Narsimha. Normally, this is not Ugra Narsimha. Here, very rarely you will find this kind of image where he is shown, with his consort, right? She's seated on his lap here. Okay. Vishnu's mount, Garuda here, he of course lacks all the bird-like features here, but here he has Vishnu and Lakshmi, seated on his shoulders in a flying posture, this Alida posture, all right, which kind of, and he on in fact, spray of lotus, not even on his shoulders. They are seated on the lotus flower here. Okay. So here, of course, you have Indra with his Vajra here, you can see. And the elephant is almost capuchin like the real elephant of the time. Its tusks are, in fact, filed, you can see here. So many a times you will find this feature, as was often done to prevent any kind of injury to the animals, riders, or the keepers. So the Indra, the king of the gods or heaven, rides with his consort here, Shachi, on the royal elephant. Among his attributes, of course, Vajra is something which is very, very common. And this is the image of Keshwa here on the here. And all right. And this is Janardana here. So these images actually, how do we come to the 24 aspects of Vishnu? We know Vishnu holds 4 attributes, Shankh, Chakra, Gada, Padma. So it is the different permutations and combinations of these 4 attributes in 4 arms of Vishnu. That's how you get these different, aspects of Vishnu, or the 24 aspects of Vishnu for that matter. Okay. So Lakshmi here in Sampad with Shankh, Chakra, Padma and fruit here. Okay. So Varha Avatar again with different attributes we are seeing here in Sampad. No motion here now, normally what we see holding, Bhudevi, along with his tusks and all. So dancing Saraswati and Mahishasur Mardini. So you can make out Saraswati here. She's holding a manuscript here and the Akshmal here and the Veena here very clearly. Lakshmi and Vishnu, Alingan Murthy, Kamdeva with bow of sugarcane and floral arrows he's holding. Yeah. So I'm looking at the now the Shikhar, the three towers. They almost look alike, but they are not identical. Chatushtala Viman. All right. So for four stories it has. It closely follows the temple plan, that is the stellate plan. So here also you can see that star-like formation, 16-sided star in the receding tiers. All right. And there are three Shukanasikas belonging to all the three antaras, the superstructures. They all had dancing Vishnu image. I showed one of them with central being the empty one. Okay. And inverted lotus at the top, as the crowning member with a kalash at the top here. Okay. So in place of Shalbhanjikas or the Surasundaris that we saw earlier, engaged in music, dance, and various everyday activities, there are very beautiful dwarf or the yaksha figures that adorn the central tower. All right. Because they are not at eye level, we cannot, admire them from, from the ground level as much. In fact, there are 12 in the first row and there are 8 in the second row. Okay. And I will show some of those yaksha figures to you. So here you can see very, very clearly the elevation of the entire temple. This is the platform in stellate form. Then you have these 9 indentations belonging to each Garbhagriha. There are 3, 2 in the at the joint. Yeah, this is the entrance that we are coming from. And these are the different divinity figures I just showed you, the superstructures there, and the prastara and the 4-tiered shikhar here we have here. Okay. So these are the beautiful yaksha figures that I was talking about. So 12 in the first row of the shikhar or the superstructure and 8 in the second row. So very, very bulky physique, sitting in the Ardh Paryank posture, as it is called, or the asan, or the Ardhasan. And it's very realistic depiction when a person has this kind of a flabby and, bulky physique. He can barely, join the 2 legs together and sit. So in that sense, I feel it's very, very, very much suited for a bulky person. There are, yakshas who are playing different instruments, scribs are there, writing. And this is again a very natural pose whereby he's kept the manuscript, pages on one of his, upheld legs here, and then he's writing here. And this singer, I want you to look at, especially, he has put one hand, along with one ear of his. Very realistic. Normally, how we find, some of the classical singers, or sometimes when they have to, sing in a very, very high pitch. That's the posture that we come across. So now we have entered inside the temple. So in fact, the architect has provided the interior hall with, a place to sit here, the Kakshasan, as we from the outside when I showed you some of the earlier temples. And this screen for light and air, Jalandharas, these are called. And these, look at the beautifully, circular pillars that we have here. So the western sanctum right at the back is the Keshwa. The image is missing now. Northern side is Janardhan and southern side is Venugopal. And 24 aspects of Vishnu carved on the 3 walls of the temple. Okay, all the walls of the temple. So the mandap is, of course, the rectangular mandap. It ends into 3 antarals, all right, because each mandap has a vestibule before you can, each Garbhagriha has a vestibule before you can, enter into the main temple. And these are the lathe-turned pillars here, typical features actually of the Hoysala period, I would say, not even Dravid. Not all Dravid temples will have this, okay. Not in worship, okay. So the mandap actually has the fusion of the rectangular shape and the stellate shape in architecture, which actually must have been quite a challenge for the architects. Okay. Another very typical feature of Hoysala period are these very, very intricately carved ceilings. So apart from the Gujarat temples, the Hoysala temples have these exquisite ceilings, a gallery of, tiny figures barely visible in front of miniature columns in the, in fact, it almost equals, I would say, what we saw in the marble ceilings of the Dilwara temples. So these are the 16 ceilings which are intricately carved. A lotus bud is there. There is a swastik figure here. All right. So the ceilings actually divide the mandap into 9 sections. Altogether, 16 ceilings. But the why I say 16 ceilings are there? Because there is a mukh mandap also. And then the main mandap, which actually is a common mandap for all the 3 garbhagriahas and the antarals. All right. All the 16 ceilings are differently decorated. And yeah. So this is the central nave that we are approaching here, where inside the garbhagriha, of course, the image is missing. I've told you that. Okay. So this is the door jamb of the vestibule or the antaral. All right. On here you have the Chandrashila as the entrance to the temple here. And in fact, the lintel has the replica of the deity, which is present in the Garbhagriha. Okay. Here you have the another lintel where you have dancing Lakshmi figure on the lintel. So sometimes you can also have the consort of the god who is present in the Garbhagriha as on the lintel, because I have told you, but here at the base now here, not this one, yeah, you will have a Vishnu figure also. Okay, so this is the image inside the southern Garbhagriha with Venugopal. Tribhanga stance. He plays the Venu or the flute. There are 2 attendants on the side. There is a cowherd with a staff standing here, right? Cows, couples, gopis, all in this parikar, you can see that frame clearly. The canopy of the Tamil tree, it almost spreads like a serpent hood. And you have Garuda in the anthropomorphic form at the base of the pedestal. All right. Very beautiful image. Then we have the Janardana image, original image, which is present in the northern sanctum. Sambhanga. Sambhanga means all the elements or the body parts are, stationary here, flanked by 2 consorts here. 6 feet in height, elaborate Prabhavali. You can see the halo around him. Yeah, very, very. And the number of ornaments and jewels that he's wearing, very, very profusely ornamented, right? Conventional symbols of lotus, chakra, conch, and the gada. He's holding. The face is very, very calm and dignified, I would say. But I would say the composition is very, very static. There's no motion here. So that's why we are often, asked that most of the sculptures of divinities or the Shalbhanjikas or the Madanikas, they are all, they are never standing in Sambhang, because the kind of the motion that imparts a lot of elegance, right, and rhythm to a sculpture as compared to something which is, standing in Sambhang. So it kind of becomes a very, very static figure. So this is a very old picture that I have, which actually is that of Keshwa, right, which with this image was present in the main Western Garbhagriha. All right. But today it is absent, and not only today, it has been absent for quite some time. But luckily, I have this image. But I showed you that stone stele right at the entrance. From there, one could make out what kind of image might have been. So we looked at the Keshwa temple here, right? Then you have these other temples also. Here you have 4 Garbhagriha's, Lakshmi Devi temple at Doragadavali. Then Panchlingeshwara temple, where you have 5 Garbhagriha's, right? Here. These are the 5 Garbhagriha's that you have. And they all have their individual mandapams also, because they are all standing in one line. Whereas here, they have a common mandapam, but different antarals, like here. This is the, now here you can clearly see, the Navranga here. This is the main mandap, Navranga, and this is the entrance. All right, and this is the antaral. All the 3 antarals are dedicated to 3 different Garbhagriha's, the Keshwa temple. Yeah. So this, I'm trying to show you an image of the Mahalakshmi temple at the, where you have the 4 Garbhagriha's, right? Then I'm also tempted to talk about one more temple, which is Ramappa temple, also known as the Rudreshwara temple, not in Karnataka today, in Telangana, is a Kaktiya style Hindu temple, which is dedicated to the god Shiva, located in Telangana. Okay. And in fact, Marco Polo, during his visit to this Kaktiya empire, he called this temple the brightest star in the galaxy of temples. Okay. In fact, this temple has become, it was very much in news lately, because it was only in July 21, as late as this. In fact, the UNESCO inscribed this 13th century temple as the World Heritage Site. Okay. In fact, Ramappa is the name of the temple, and in Palampet. So what is so interesting also about this temple are these, again, these Madhanika figures, which are, present along the, as the bracket figures. So this was also built by the general of the Kaktiya ruler, Ganpati, I think his name was, yeah. And Ruchera was the name of the, Ruchera Rudra was the name of this general, or the Dandanayak, who was instrumental in the making of this particular temple. It was constructed between the early part of the 13th century. And in fact, designed and architect was Ramappa was the name of the architect after whom the temple complex is also named. So here you see very, very stylized and elongated these, figures throbbing with life, which actually is a very typical feature of this Telangana area. This figure I'm trying to show you from Amravati Stupa. And here again, you can see this same kind of very elongated, human figures, which is actually typical of these Amravati sculptures also, which are again replicated in these later sculptures. So this Amravati Stupa is, I'm talking about, early first, second, BC, and right, almost up till 2nd century CE, right? So this early. And these are, of course, very late. But the very, I would say the vocabulary of making the sculptures has not really changed as much. Yeah. So I think with this, we are going to finish today's lecture. Yeah. Thank you very much. Have I stopped sharing? Yeah. Okay.
मैम को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आज आपने हम लोगों को कर्नाटक के मंदिरों का बहुत ही अच्छा परिचय कराया है। अब हम अगला जो 1 तारीख को आपका एपिसोड देखेंगे, उसमें केरल के मंदिर की ओर हम लोग चल रहे हैं, विजयनगर का। ठीक है ना मैडम?
यस, डेफिनेटली।
हाँ, तो केरल के, और अब हम लोगों का ये लास्ट बट वन मानना पड़ेगा हम लोगों को, इसलिए सब लोगों से यही गुजारिश है कि अधिक से अधिक इसमें हम लोग जुड़ें। और फिर से मैं मैम के प्रति हार्दिक धन्यवाद देता हूँ अपनी संस्था की ओर से, और सभी श्रोताओं के प्रति भी कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करता हूँ। साथ ही इस कार्यक्रम के जो क्या कहते हैं डिजाइन करने वाले हैं हमारे डॉक्टर जीतू भाई, उनके प्रति भी कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करता हूँ कि उनकी ही यह संरचना थी इस तरह की, और उसको कार्य रूप में परिणत करने के लिए जो हमारे प्रायोजक हैं उन सभी चारों बंधुओं के भी हम बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं। हमारे संस्था के अध्यक्ष हैं चेयरमैन श्री निर्मल गोगिला जी मुंबई, इसी तरह से संस्था के प्रेसिडेंट श्री राजकुमार जी, और पूर्व कोषाध्यक्ष श्री धनेश जी का परिवार, तथा मातु श्री राजकुमारी जी सुमेर चंद जी के परिवार के प्रति भी हम बहुत बहुत कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में हम लोग आज की सभा को यहीं पर विराम करते हैं। धन्यवाद मैडम।
Thank you, sir, and thank you everybody. Yeah.